What is up? Welcome to the Existential Stoic podcast. Have you ever felt like you're going against the grain or the current, or I don't know, you just can't, things just don't seem to be going together and it's a mess? Well, today we're going to talk about how to go with the flow. I'm Danny, and my buddy Randy. What's up, Randy?
Yo, Danny.
Do you ever feel like you're fighting the current of life?
Oh, dude, all the time. Like sometimes I feel like I'm trying to like trudge through quicksand or I'm butting my head up. I mean, yeah, I've been told I'm stubborn, like butting my head up against the wall. And so many times I just feel like I'm completely 100% going against the flow, resisting reality with like an extreme
Yeah,
prejudice.
yeah. Trying to go up the steep hill with like a rock tied to you.
Yeah.
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 It's really hard to accept it sometimes, though. It's like you want it's like you desperately want to see the world a certain way, and like no matter how much stuff tells you it's not that way or that's not right, you're still just like, nope. You
Mhm.
just keep forging ahead, and it's like doesn't always work out. Things
It's
go
my
badly.
way or the highway.
And everybody's got to stick with it.
Absolutely.
Yes, I don't know. I thought this was a good topic for pretty much everybody at any time. It's always good. It always helps. I don't know. I always think of Taoists talk about like going with the flow of nature, and I always think of it like as like a stream. Like going with the current. And being aware of what's going on around you so that you can do that. That always helps me because I think so much of like what goes wrong in my life is when I'm trying to go against things, or when I'm trying to like you were saying before, like when I'm refusing to recognize like reality essentially. And I think that is important. Like going with the flow is like being realistic, seeing what's actually there instead of fighting it,
Mhm.
and trying to make it something different.
Yeah. We forget so often that we're a thing of nature, particularly because we spend our whole day in these little boxes. And
Yeah.
it's like, but if you spend time outside, there's really nothing that's going against the flow. Like everything's just flowing. And
Yeah.
maybe for a brief moment something might go against the flow, but it's really just for the briefest of moments. It's not like these resentments that we harbor for decades.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that too. Like you go out in nature too, and you also see like because you're right. Like I mean, like it is like possible to not even step outside in nature your whole day. You can just be in like an artificial world. But when you go out in the real world, you do see like how things work together, how things like die and get eaten, and how there is like a sort of system to it and a sort of flow and cycle that's necessary. And I think you can look at the world differently that way too, because you kind of see that like we interpret all this stuff as good, bad, whatever, but in reality, it just is. It's just part of life, right? Part of the process. And I think that's like the biggest struggle humans have in like living a good life and finding things meaningful and even just being happy is that like we make up all these stories, meanings, and like at the same time, like we try to impose it on top of like the world when in fact it just is. And there's no real like anything beyond that. Like it already is an explanation for itself.
Hmm. Yeah, agreed. Uh, I think another thing that causes it is just how quick we're moving. Like if you look at the flows in nature, it's slow.
Yeah.
Even like rapids in the water, if you still sit by it, it's like slow. It's crazy because the water move really fast, but it's like slow how all of it goes. Meanwhile, we're like trying to do a million things all at once. We're trying to stay on top of Facebook and Instagram and all these different things. We need to know all the world news, everything right now. And it's just like when we're going so fast, it's difficult to connect and it's difficult to go with the flow because you don't even know what's important.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm glad you mentioned that. I feel like there's, so many times where I catch myself where like I'm like, trying to learn something, trying to like, I want like, particularly right now, like, trying to learn programming stuff, trying to, and I expect to be at a I want to be an expert now, like right now. And it's like, I'll catch myself getting mad at myself or like not making enough progress or like thinking to myself, like it's 8 o'clock and I'm like, I'll just do another 2 hours. And it's like, then I'll stop myself. I'm like, wait, why? Like, why am I just going to work all day? Like, that makes no sense. The gain I'm going to make in that 2 hours, I can make probably in 30 minutes in the morning when I'm fresh. And I could also spend some time and actually enjoy myself with the people I love and do something besides work for a little while, and like actually hang out and do other things. But we get caught up in this mentality that it has to be now and it has to be as soon as possible. But like you're right, you look at the world, it's like things happen when they happen. They take time. They're not instant. And I always wonder, like, how do we get caught up in this? Like, where we, like, what happened to us that we, that we, you know, turned into these creatures that make so many demands on ourselves and expect such unrealistic outcomes all the time.
I think the answer is the 80s cocaine and greed. And that's what did it.
Yeah, it's probably it, right?
Because before
Everyone's
that
like, you can have
it was like
anything, you
peace,
can have
love,
it
and
right.
rock and roll, man.
Then it's like, get it done right now. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Yeah.
Don't sleep. You can work another 10 hours.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's funny.
I mean,
Yeah.
I it's funny that you mentioned that stuff because I find myself so often where I'm trying to solve all these problems that most likely, if I was just patient, they would take care of themselves. I'm struggling uphill against the current, doing all this stuff, and it's just like, hey, if I just chill and let it happen, it'll probably just take care of itself.
Hey, guy, just relax.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it is true though. I think you're right. Like, I mean, we we get this idea in our heads that it has to be now, and we think we can solve it by just doing. And like that's the funny thing too, that belief that we can solve by just doing more,
Mm.
when it's like you also have to evaluate the quality of the work, like what you're actually doing. Is it even right? Because I find in myself too, like a lot of times I'm in that mindset of like, gotta do more, gotta do more. Like it isn't even really like valuable half the time what I'm doing. Because it's like rushed, panicked, stressed, you know what I mean? And it's like you're probably already tired. It's like kind of worthless.
Mm. Yeah, it got every once in a while I kind of think back to when I was a kid and there would be those days when I'd wake up and I'd have nothing to do and I'd be like, "Oh, what am I gonna do today?" And like fast forward to nowadays, it's like, after I've gone to the gym and done all the stuff that I have to do and read all the books I need to read and all this stuff, it's like the day's over. So where,
What do
where's
you
the
do?
3 days? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess there is that. Like, I do feel lucky in that sense. Like, and I know you're the same way. Like, you have a lot of interests, hobbies, and stuff, and that's good. Like, I mean, it can be stressful because it can also be like it feels like you have too much to do sometimes, or too many things you want to do. But I think it's also a good thing. Like, it's healthy to have a lot of interests and stuff. So I'm
Mm.
happy about that. But it does make it hard, like trying to fit everything in.
Mm.
You know, it's funny. I do think this is where like I know you were talking about before in the other on the other episode earlier, but like habits are important because I think they also do give us kind of like some sense of control and also sense of time. Like I noticed like when I started trying to develop habits, like you see how long it takes. You see how often like even when you think you have something down, how often you have to remind yourself and like still, make the effort to like intentionally do it again and keep reaffirming that habit. And so you kind of see that like things aren't instant. They take a lot of time. They take time to like build and like really, secure, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. What's the crazy thing about habits is you only ever have to do it today.
Yeah, like once.
That's it. You only ever have to do it today. It is
Once,
today,
yeah,
you
yeah.
do it. But it's like it's the craziest thing because we have these habits that we make and like oftentimes there are these monumental commitments that we have to do like, oh, I have to go to the gym 2 hours and can't eat more than 1,000 calories, and it's like that is not exactly some, like how about I'll do a push-up today. I could do that every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, we make them unrealistic, right? Because I think that's, well, people try to like they try to make things happen too fast. You see what, we're coming up to the new year in a couple of months.
Mm.
So you'll see everybody on these like 3 week or 1 month plans to like work out and diet. It's
uh,
like, well, if you do it for 3 weeks, dude, it's not gonna last. It just
can't
can't.
wait
Because
can't
one,
wait for them all to post to social
yeah,
media, guys, I'm going to be doing this diet. I just want to tell everybody
yeah,
because then it'll make it happen and it's my commitment and
yeah.
thoughts and prayers, bro.
But it's funny because, dude, if you look at all of them, they're always like way too over ambitious. They're like, I'll just go to the gym 4 hours to start with and only eat lettuce. And it's like, okay, you're not gonna make it.
Dude, I
It's
remember
just,
I remember this one person that I know, I won't name names, but right after New Year's, picture on Facebook or something like that, covered in mud. Just like went for a 10-mile trail run with the dog, hashtag beast mode. It's like, oh my gosh, this is too much.
And then you never see that post again.
I know that was the last time. It was a one-time thing.
Hashtag New Year trying something out. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny. It's like that's why like I think it's such a bad idea even to make resolutions like that. You're better off just like, you know, making the small changes that allow you to make those big changes, but with actually like I think that's what it means. Like to go with the flow or go with the current is to like do it in a way where there's not that resistance, where you actually work instead of working against yourself, you work with yourself so that you get yourself to where you want to be rather than forcing it or trying to force it, which never works.
Yeah, I like that analogy because it's very, very good to help think of it in visual terms because we can all see
Oh yeah.
like the flow of a river or something and kind of going with that flow, or like a lazy lagoon where you're sitting on the little
You
float.
see the other hand. I
Yeah,
love those things.
yeah. But I once went to like a conference where there were some very, very successful people, and they actually talked about going with the flow there. And it seemed counterintuitive because here are guys who are like crushing it in the financial sense of everything, in the business sense, and they're talking about going with the flow. But actually, how they were talking about it was you need to figure out where and what the flow is, and then do whatever it takes to get into the proper flow. So, like, if you think about it, how there's a whole bunch of different flows, and you could be going against the flow, which is just terrible. But if you get caught in the wrong flow and it takes you to the wrong place, you don't want to be there either. So, like, first identifying which flow you want to be in, and then if you're in the wrong one or you're going against it or you're still on the shore, do whatever it takes to get into that right flow. Because once you get there, then you don't have to do anything. It's like catching a wave. Once you're at the crest of the wave, you don't have to do anything. It's already done. But up until there, you have to do some effort to get there.
It's funny. I think that's like why, like, that whole idea of flow and being with like the flow of the river and stuff. That's why the Taoists say, like, the master, does everything by doing nothing. I'm paraphrasing, by the way, but you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
that, they're able to do things without, it sounds like what they're saying is they're able to do things without acting, but what they really mean is like, they're not, they're not acting in the way that we normally think of acting, like this, like goal oriented, like kind of always with resistance, always with, against the curve or against the grain or whatever. And instead they're going with it. So things that need to happen when they need to, right? So yeah, I think, yeah, it is nice having those visualizations. It makes it easier to see kind of like what you're trying to think about and like understand. Yeah.
I can even see with habits how that can be doing without doing. Because like once you get in the
Yeah.
habit of doing something, like applying for a job every day or doing a problem every day or whatever it is every day, it becomes automatic. So you're almost doing it without doing it. There's no
Yeah.
energy cost to do it. It's just part of what you do. And then you're like the master because you're already in the flow, you're already doing it, and you don't have to think about it.
Hey, one example that I think is often helpful that helps is like
Oh, do
imagine
tell.
like oh yeah, yeah, right. There's a lot uh secrets. A lot of people will I think it relates to this, like if you've ever like learned a musical instrument or like played a sport, like on a team, any kind of team, right? Like you practice a lot. And the practice is necessary because you have to learn how to do everything, right? You have to learn scales, you have to learn how to do different moves and all. But because the point is like when you are in a concert or you're in a game, you can't be thinking about what you're doing, right? It has to be like muscle memory. It has to be already like that knowledge has to be within you and ready to act on an instant. Because like, if think about it, if you were playing like soccer or something, and you had to think about every move you were going to do, you would be terrible, right? Because you would never be on time. You'd never be able to react spontaneously to anything. You'd never be able to sort of react to changing situations and events as they happen, nor would you be able to read the field and read what's going on. And I think that's kind of the point, like getting to that state of like the action and no action is kind of like that. Like it's recognizing, being able to read things and being able to act like almost like this spontaneous sort of action where you're doing what you need to do in that moment to make the thing happen. Does that make sense?
Oh,
Kind of.
absolutely. It's like I think the military has some saying like that where they say you don't rise to the occasion, you sink to your training. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But
Yeah.
that's part of the yeah, no, I mean you always hear like the what's that what's the what oh my God, is it the Green Berets or whatever, the really like elite guys or whatever?
Yeah,
Like
they're
what
one of
is the
them.
guys called?
SEALs.
Yeah, one of them. Okay. The
right?
SEALs, that's
Seals.
what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Okay.
You hear about their training is like so brutal. And part of it is that, like when they have that small team and they're out doing something, like they can't break down. So they have to break them down now in training so that when that happens, they can still, still go on. Yeah.
Dude, and okay, so I just had this discussion with another guy that I know who was telling me about these. First, he was talking about ultra marathoners, and then he's talking about these like crazy extreme athletes, these guys who just do like absolutely absurd stuff that we would never think of doing. And we were talking about them, and then I was listening to the Tao Te Ching, and one of the things that I heard in there was like, when you lose your fear of death, there's nothing you cannot accomplish. And it's like, I think that's probably part of like the SEALs training is like, you do all this stuff. And I've read a couple books about guys who are in the BUDS, which is the SEALs training. And they're like, you get to a point where there's no more pain that they can inflict in you.
Yeah.
Like you just start laughing about it because you're like, you're already been in pain. You're chafed from like head to tail.
Yeah.
Like, and like, you're just like, I've already experienced all the pain I'm ever gonna. What are you gonna do? Yell at me? Make me
Yeah.
like hold my breath underwater? Like what? Like freeze? Not sleep? I've already done it. Like what more
Yeah.
is there?
It's really interesting. Yeah, it is funny because like I mean, I couldn't even imagine going through what they're going through. And like the sleep deprivation stuff, it's nuts. And still having to like do things. Like, why is that happening? But it makes sense, right? Because like they need them to be so prepared that like you said, like, right, what else is gonna happen? So you can get to that limit and still go on. And I think that's yeah. And I think you're right, like that idea of like this, we do so much because we're afraid of dying. We do so much because, we tell ourselves all these stories, we make up all these ways of interpreting things, all these values that, we're associated with ourselves and stuff. And most of it is just made up, and most of it leads us really against the grain, right? It's even like, you can even apply this, I think, to like, we talked about so many times, like trying to like be happy. So many struggle because we look outside for the answers rather than inside. I think that's the same sort of thing, like if you're living somebody else's idea of a good life, it's not going to be a good life for you because it's not your life. So you
Yeah.
have to like kind of, find out what works for you rather than for someone else.
I'm glad you brought up happiness because a lot of times when I think about happiness now, I think about the seasons. Because there's a time for there. You know that song. There's a time for the I don't know what the thing is, but actually
I know
that's
what you're
from
talking about, but I have no clue what the
yeah.
name is. Yeah.
But that's surprisingly that's actually from the Tao Te Ching. It's like there's like a season for happiness, there's a season for sadness, there's a season for like all these different things, and it's crazy because we want this never-ending happiness. It's like always feeling good and as guilty as charged. Like I'm the
Yeah.
me
Yeah,
too.
totally.
Especially when I'm
Yeah.
feeling bad, I want it to be gone ASAP. But like I try and remind myself in these down times, like it's just a season. It's gonna last however long it lasts, and then the next thing comes up, and then that comes too. And it's just like, but like with feeling good, with happiness, understanding that going with the flow is understanding it's not gonna last. It's gonna come and it's
Yeah.
gonna go, and you just need to be understanding of that.
No, I think that's a really good way to look at it. Like, I like that idea of the seasons too, because like change is a part of life. And like, you know, if you think about what it means to be a human being, we have consciousness, we have emotions, we have passions, so like we're going to experience them. And like it's unrealistic to think it's just gonna be all happiness, right? Just because we don't like the other ones. All is still gonna happen. Like, life is change. Things are gonna happen that we don't like, but it doesn't mean we have to experience them in an unhealthy way. I think that's a big part of it too, is just realizing like that we're natural beings, that we're part of nature, that this stuff happens, and like it's not something that has to be so detrimental and destroy us, right? It can be something that we just recognize as part of who we are. Like I get sad sometimes.
Mm.
I feel good sometimes. It's the same thing. It's just a different experience. It just is.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's kind of like recognizing that wherever you are right now is kind of where you're supposed to be.
yeah, kind of, right.
Isn't that
Which
the damnedest part of it?
it really is though. You ever think of it too? Like, is there, you know, and this will sound kind of weird, I guess, but like, the difference between like pleasure and pain, is there really a difference other than just interpretation? I
Mm-mm.
mean, they're both just, experiences, chemical reactions. I mean, like, right? What is different? And yet we give them such different interpretations. We try to run from one and towards the other, and like, yeah.
Dude, I've got a great example for how like pleasure and pain can just be something else. So like anybody out there, just go on Google like the tip of a cat's penis because it is like barbed, like serious like
Oh yeah.
barbs. And it's like, pleasure and pain, like where is the boundary between the two of them? And yeah, because a lot of things that
Not
they
only
can just
that,
get
but like
mixed up.
half the time you don't really have one until you have the other, or you don't realize the value of one until you realize the other, right? Like a lot of times, those pain states make us also more aware of than not the pleasurable states, and vice versa. So I think realizing that's all connected.
Hmm.
We try to, I think that's the problem with, we live in this like fabricated world, and we try so hard to make everything fit the plan that we want.
Hmm.
Like, these organized, homogenous places, we try to organize everything. We try to make control everything instead of just, thinking about, that we have control over ourselves and the rest of it's just going to do what it's going to do.
Yeah. Well, like I think the hard thing about the control over ourselves is that like it doesn't always feel tangible. Like
Yeah, I mean,
theoretically, I know I have control over my thoughts and my emotions and stuff like that. But like when I really want it, it's just like, do I really? Can I really control that? Hmm.
oh, where it feels like it just like comes on out of nowhere, or like,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I can have that feeling, I guess, where like you feel like, it's not almost like it's not you, like it's like, yeah, it's happening to you kind of thing.
Or just like you have so like one of these books that I'm reading recently is just like I shouldn't be reading it because it just gives you like bad ideas about what could happen in the future. And it's like I know that's none of my business because what happens in the universe is the universe's business, not my business. But it's still something that like causes me to get all like tense inside. And when that
What are you talking
happens,
about? Like,
like a book on cybersecurity just about
oh, oh,
about like state
okay, okay.
yeah about like state hackers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so it's
all
just
that stuff.
something
Yeah.
it's something that like causes me to get like all tight inside. And it's just like
Yeah.
and then I'm like, come on, Randall, like you can control your mind, like you could do this. And so I'll start like consciously having some positive thoughts, and then the moment I forget, it's just like straight back down the gutter.
Well, I think, but part of it, I think, too, is also like recognizing like what is setting you off in those cases. Like maybe realizing that, like, okay, hey, this like stresses me out. So maybe I do need to like not engage with it in such long amount. Like, maybe like take a break from reading it, do something else, because you
Mhm.
can, in that sense, you have the control, right? You don't have to you don't have to keep thinking about it over and over. You can kind of do other things. I think that's kind of part of it too, is, just being more self-aware too. Because so many of us, I think, are not self-aware, like have no clue what's going on within ourselves. I mean, I was guilty of that too. I think I am, in some very important ways. So yeah, I think that's part of it too, is just trying to, realize you can kind of change your perspective, change even your situation or surroundings, and be aware of what like causes that stress. So many people watch the news all the time and they're miserable, and they it's like they almost see the connection, but not quite. And it's like you don't have to watch it. Like,
Every time I get caught in a room with like somebody who's watching the news, they're like, "Do you believe this?" And I'm like, "Have you ever felt better after watching the news?" And they're like, "No." I was like, "All right, up to you."
and like it's just outrage. Like, what are you gonna do with the information?
Basically,
It's not like,
just get outraged with someone else. Be like, "Do you believe this?" Ah.
can you believe what they said? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, going with the flow though. It's just like knowing ourselves, right? Knowing, kind of trying to be more in tune with what our emotions are, a healthy expression of them, and trying not to force things to be a certain way, but just sometimes realizing that things just are how they are. And that's okay too.
Hmm. Yeah, and relaxing,
That's a good one.
and just realizing we're on our way to the grave. Like that's it. So just enjoy it while you're here.
That's okay too. Because it's gonna
Yeah.
happen to everybody.
Yeah, right?
That's
Uh,
part of life.
we're all
What are
gonna
you gonna do, right?
die. And it's okay.
Yeah. Take a break.
Yep. So that's all I got.
All right. We can call it for today, and that's good. So, how to go with the flow? Check us out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts as well. Please like, subscribe, and share. We'll be back later this week with a quick fix. Until then, later, Randy.
Later, Danny.